The red error light on the office copier blinked like a silent alarm, and with every pulse, Lila Matthews felt her world crumbling beneath her feet. Her hand hovered over the machine's smudged interface, fingers trembling with a panic she couldn't hide anymore. The entire office was buzzing around her, keyboards clattered like falling dominoes, heels tapped rhythmically across marble floors, and voices echoed down the sleek hallways, all too busy to notice the lone assistant trapped in battle with a dusty copier that refused to do its only job. It wasn't just a broken copier. It was the final straw. Lila's proposal for a high-profile client was trapped inside it, pages she had stayed late to perfect, pouring her already exhausted heart into a pitch she hoped might finally earn her a sliver of recognition. It was due 20 minutes ago. The pressure in her chest made it hard to breathe, and as she jabbed another button that only triggered a louder grinding noise, she could feel the eyes on her. Not kind eyes, watchful ones. Judgmental ones. From behind a glass office door, her supervisor glared through narrow blinds, lips tight, already calculating whether it was time to replace her. She hadn't always been this anxious, this desperate. But life had chipped away at her confidence piece by piece over the past 3 years. First the divorce that left her with nothing but her son and a mountain of debt. Then the move to this new city, this new job that paid just enough to keep them afloat if she skipped things like proper groceries or her own dreams. Now she was here, wearing worn-out flats and a blouse that hid the wear and tear well enough, praying to a machine like it was her last hope. Then, as if summoned by some silent signal, a man walked in. He didn't move like the others. While everyone else darted around the office with urgency and clipped tones, this man walked slowly, casually, like he belonged in a place where time didn't control him. He wore jeans. Not fitted ones, but the kind that had faded from real work. His navy work shirt had no name tag, but it was worn enough to suggest it had cleaned up messes in more places than this high-rise office. He had a streak of toner across one palm and a small toolkit dangling from his hand. Lila stepped back instinctively, brushing a stray hair from her face, embarrassed. She watched as he crouched beside the copier, humming under his breath, eyes scanning the inside of the machine like it was a familiar old friend. He didn't ask her to explain what happened. He didn't sigh or judge. He just worked, quietly but confidently, twisting a knob here, adjusting a gear there. Within minutes, the red light disappeared. The copier let out a low groan and began printing. Lila's breath caught. She leaned forward and snatched the pages as they came out, her fingers running over the ink as if to make sure it was real. Relief flooded her like warm sunlight after days of rain. She turned to the man, overwhelmed with gratitude, but all he offered was a wink and a half-smile before walking away. She never got his name. But for the first time that day, Lila felt seen. Not pitted, seen. Not fixed, but lifted, if only for a moment. That evening, after her proposal was submitted and she was finally alone in the office, Lila stood by the copier once more. The building was mostly empty, shadows crawling across desks as the sun dipped below the skyline. She didn't know it yet, but that moment, one quiet act of help from a man she assumed was the janitor, was the beginning of something that would rewrite her life. And the man with toner-streaked hands and knowing eyes? He was no ordinary janitor. He was watching her, not just fixing machines, but searching for something real in a world that often forgot how to be kind. To the copier worked perfectly the next day, humming a quiet song as it spit out reports and spreadsheets for the morning rush. No one else gave it much thought, but Lila paused beside it, running her hand over its smooth surface like it was an old friend. She remembered the way that man Mark, she'd later learn, had crouched down, calm and kind, and made something broken whole again. No one had ever done that for her. Not since her father passed away. Not since her ex walked out, blaming her for a life he claimed she'd ruined. That morning, she saw him again. He was mopping the hallway outside the executive wing, head bent, moving slowly but with purpose. A few of the assistants walked past him, too busy or too proud to say hello. One even wrinkled her nose and muttered something under her breath about maintenance staff being everywhere. Lila cringed, but Mark didn't react. He just continued his slow rhythm, almost like he was cleaning not just the floors, but the energy of the space. She paused beside him, holding 2 coffees, one for herself and one for him. He looked up, surprised at first, then smiled gently as he accepted the cup. They sat on a nearby bench without saying much. She didn't know why she felt so comfortable around him. Maybe it was because he didn't expect anything. He didn't rush her or fill the silence with meaningless chatter. He just existed beside her, and sometimes, that was more comforting than all the sympathy in the world. Over the next 2 weeks, Lila began noticing him everywhere. Sometimes fixing a leaky faucet in the restroom. Sometimes resetting the elevator system. Sometimes just walking through the parking garage with a clipboard in hand. But always calm. Always observant. Once, she caught him in the stairwell, staring out the narrow window at the city below. He looked far away in that moment, lost in memory. When she approached, he turned quickly, as if shaking off a lifetime of thoughts, and offered his usual nod. But something didn't quite add up. He wasn't like the other custodians. He didn't carry himself like someone beneath anyone. He wasn't afraid of supervisors. He wasn't uncomfortable near senior staff. In fact, more than once, she saw him speaking with them like an equal, and they listened. Laughed, even. She couldn't understand it. Why would someone that respected be pushing him up? The real clue came one late evening. She had stayed late again, catching up on client files while her son stayed with her neighbor. Her eyes were tired, her back sore, and the office was nearly empty. She decided to take a break on the rooftop terrace, a quiet, overlooked place with a few benches and potted plants that overlooked the skyline. To her surprise, he was already there. Mark stood near the edge, his blazer draped over the back of a chair, wearing a simple white shirt now unbuttoned at the collar. In the moonlight, he looked different. Stronger. Sharper. Almost elevated. There was a binder in his hands, full of financial graphs and internal memos. Company projections. Late night? She asked softly. He turned, smiled. Sometimes the best ideas come when everyone else goes home. She tilted her head, curious. You talk like a CEO. He laughed. But it wasn't dismissive. It was quiet. Careful. I talk like someone who's been on the ground long enough to know how every bolt holds the machine together, he said, placing the binder aside. You'd be surprised how much you can learn by simply listening. Something shifted in her chest. She should have been suspicious. But instead, she felt safe. He wasn't mocking her. He wasn't testing her. He was revealing something. Days later, the truth unraveled. She was called to the boardroom not for a reprimand, but for a special meeting. As she entered the room, her heart froze. Every top executive in the company sat around the table. The air was heavy with importance. Then, the doors opened once more, and Mark walked in, not in janitor's clothes, but in a perfectly tailored suit. Heads turned. Some stood. Some looked genuinely uncomfortable. He stepped to the front, calm and confident, and began speaking. My name is Marcus Talbot. Most of you know me as the CEO. But for the past month, I've been walking through this building as someone else, someone people ignore. Someone people talk down to. Someone who sees the truth of how this company breathes. And what I found were more than just numbers and policies. I found people. He turned to her, eyes gentle, yet proud. And I found one employee who, despite challenges and pressure and unfair assumptions, treated everyone with dignity. Who gave kindness without expectation. Who showed courage in the little things that most never see. Lila couldn't breathe. This company needs more people like Lila Matthews, he continued. Not just because she's capable, but because she reminds us what leadership really looks like. Her ears rang. Her legs shook. The applause around her felt like waves crashing on the shore after a long, silent storm. She was promoted. Not just to a better job, but to a life where she was finally allowed to thrive, not just survive. From that day forward, everything changed. She had better hours. A real office. A team to lead. Her son got the school scholarship he needed. And her confidence returned, slowly, steadily, like sunlight seeping back after years of cold. But the part she never forgot? It wasn't the promotion. It wasn't the applause. It was that someone saw her.